everyone, welcome back to another video with Pine Hollow Quilts. Today we are going to be doing a pumpkin and a leaf. 2 blocks for the price of 1 today, folks. How can you pass that up? Fall is my favorite time of the year, so I decided to do fall blocks this time, and they're very easy. The first one we're going to show is the pumpkin block. You need 3 fabrics. You need your main fabric, which is your pumpkin. You need a background fabric. I chose this brown because I want it to look like it's on the ground. And then I have green for a stem. If you have fat quarters work really well as a large piece for the pumpkin. Everything else can be scraps. If you have, once you get this put together, if you want a cohesive quilt and you want a background that is the same for the leaves and the pumpkins, you're going to need a little bit of yardage. But how much yardage you need is going to depend on you and how big you make it. You know, I always tell you to take these blocks and put them together however it fits your needs. If you want a table runner, make several of them and make the table runner. If you want a small wall hanging, gather them together. I give you the basic instructions for the 2 blocks. I want to see what you can put together on your own. This is the leaf block that I'm going to show you afterwards. Again, very simple. You can choose to put the stem in it or not. That's your choice, and I'll show you both ways. So let's get started. For the pumpkin, you're going to need a square. A 10-inch square will work if you have some leftover squares from your layer cakes, or if you have some fat quarters that you picked up at the local big box store on sale. As long as it is 7.5 by 8.5. So today I'm going to use this really cool zigzaggy orange and yellow print. Now, because this is directional and I want it directional, I will have to make sure I cut it the right direction. Therefore, the 8.5 will have to go across my zigzags, and it's 7.5 inches tall. And I will give you all these measurements as soon as we get to that point, and I'll give you enough time to get them written down. So first off, I'm going to come out 8.5 inches. Okay. And I know I need my other ruler. Because I need to make sure I come in enough. Or go up high enough. Because I need 8.5. And I need 8.5 to go the right direction. I could also be using my square ruler, which would make a whole lot more sense. Okay, here we are back with my square ruler, which would greatly make this a lot better. Okay, so I need to go 8.5 this way because I want this to be my width. So we're going to go out to 8.5. And because I did not square this piece of fabric beforehand, I'm just going to cut this so that I know I have enough. Yes, I'm cutting a little waste, but that's me. Okay, so 8.5 that way. Let me square off one side of it. And then I can measure the 7.5. Okay, so there's my square side. So 8.5 this way across my zigzags, 7.5 up. And I am using the Creative Grids ruler that has the 1/2 inch markings on it. So there's my 8.5 that I just cut. And there's my 7.5 that I just squared off. So there we go. There is my 8.5 by 7.5 inch rectangle. Okay, then I need 2.5 inch squares of background fabric. This is my background fabric. I already have some squares cut over at the sewing table, but one strip of 2.5 inch squares will give you enough for this, and a couple leaves or a couple of extra pumpkins. And then the next thing I need is a 1.5 by 3 3/4 strip. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that with you. This is my leaf fabric that I'll show you when we get to it. Let's move this out of the way. See, I have the same struggle as you do of not having enough space. But that's okay. We make do with what we have. And since I've been cutting on this, I know I have a straight edge here. Well, had a straight edge here. Okay. So I'm going to cut it 1.5. And you can choose to cut it the other direction. Like I said, I will give you these measurements in just a minute with plenty of time to write them down. Because I'm not quite sophisticated enough yet to figure out how to insert a little diagram for you. But we'll get there. Okay, so here's my strip. And again, this is just something I had in my stash. Use what you have. No need to go out and get anything special. This wasn't quite the brown I was looking for when I found it, but I saw this in my pile over there. It's like, oh, this pretty little, and they're almost like a rose gold swirl. Would look really cute because they reminded me of pumpkin vines. Okay, so this is 1.5 by 3 3/4. So come out to 3 3/4. And I need 2 of those, so I'm just going to leave it doubled. Remember when you're cutting to place the marks of your ruler onto your fabric so that you have enough for your seam allowances. And I've showed that in previous videos. Okay, so there are my 2 strips. So I have my pumpkin fabric, I have my 2 strips, and now I need a little square of, and again the square ruler will come in handy right here. Let's get a smaller square ruler though. I need 1.5 by 2. Okay, so we're going to cut this at 1.5. And I can definitely get 2 out of this one for another time, for another pumpkin, because these things are addicting. They're like sugar and caffeine. They're really fun to make. Okay. All right. So I've got my green for my stem. These are going to go on either side of my stem when we get to that point. And then I've got the 2.5 inch squares that we're going to put on the corners of the triangle, and we're going to snowball it. That's what the big leagues call it. Anyway, I'm going to pull this out here so I can give you a shot of what the requirements are for the pumpkin so that you have plenty of time to write them down. So here we are. I'm holding this, so it might wiggle a little bit, but this is cutting for 1 pumpkin. You need the 1 piece of 7.5 by 8.5 inch orange, and that's a rectangle. You need 4 2.5 inch squares of your background fabric. Mine is the brown. Then you need 2 1.5 by 3 3/4 rectangles of your background fabric. That's going to go on either side of your stem. And then you need 1 1.5 by 2 inch green rectangle for the stem. All right, let's get to putting this together and come up with a pumpkin. Okay, so here we are. I've got the pieces for my stem, and here are the brown, my background 2.5-inch squares that we're going to use to snowball the pumpkin block. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our squares across the center, the background squares, because we need a sew line, so to speak. I'm just using a little ruler here that I keep over at my sewing machine to make my life easier when doing things like this. There's 2. Yeah, one of these days we'll get the third light switched out and make it a little brighter over here, but for now, I hope that you're all able to see what I'm doing. If not, I'll have to reshoot this, but no, we should be okay. Okay, so right sides together, match your corners, and I'm going to stitch 1 needle position into the part I'm going to cut off, into my seam allowance, and that is just going to make it easier when I press, that everything's going to be right where I need it to be. So I've moved my needle over 1 position. I'm still lining it up with the center mark on my foot, keeping it lined up. It's just that I'm 1 needle position over. And you're going to do this to all 4 corners. There's 1. Go ahead and stitch along with me. I don't tend to speed up the camera. If anything, I'll stop it, but it's only 4 little corners, so I think we can just keep right on going today. And the reason for stitching, the reason that I stitch 1 needle position, and that one's going to be a little crooked, but you know what? No quilt police here in my studio. It'll be fine because it's going to be within a seam allowance anyway. And we're going to be cutting these into triangles, so there's going to be a little bit of stitch, a little bit of stretch. Now this would not be the attitude that I have if this would be a quilt that's going to be put into a show, or a quilt that I'm making for a family member, or one that I've actually been commissioned to make. But this is for me, this is fun, this is going to hang in my house once I figure out what I'm going to do with it, or possibly on my table. And my table has little ones around it now, so you know, it's not perfect, it's me, I'm happy with it. We're gonna roll. Alright, so all 4 are on, and now the easy way to do this is to take it to your cutting board and use your ruler and line it up and cut your 1/4 inch off. I'm not doing easy things today. I can eyeball this. I'm going to cut it. Okay, there's that 1/4. There's 2. And once you've been quilting for 20 years like I have, it's fine. Now what you can do, if you take these over to the cutting board, and you'll see that I've already done this with some other ones that I'll show you at the end, is I've saved these little squares, these little triangles, and I have stitched these little triangles, all 4 of them, or all 4 sets. I keep them together. And this would be important if you were going to do it at the cutting board, which is what I did on the other ones, but this one I'm saving time. but I stitch a 1/4 inch seam along the cut line that I made for all 4 of them, and then I put them into pinwheels, and I will show you that, because you'll end up with half square triangles, triangles similar to this, and then you just put 4 together to make the pinwheel. Like I said, I will show you those, but for today's purpose, I'm not. The next thing I'm going to do is press these open, and I have a handy dandy little iron here. It's just a handheld one that shut off on me. Okay, so I'm going to press it down. I always set my seams. It just warms the thread up a little bit, warms the fabric up, so that I can get a more crisp fold open. You can certainly take this to your big iron if you'd like. There's 2. Starting to look pretty cute, I have to say. And the fun thing is, with doing these videos, you can see that I have some of the same real struggles that you do in my quilting room. You know, things move, things slide, things don't come together quite the way, you know, you think they should. Yeah, I'm a real quilter. Okay, there we go. Way. Yes, that is a wool pressing mat. Yes, I am using it here. No, it does not hurt my top. Okay. I find using the wool pressing mat is, it helps my seams set a little bit better. I don't use it at the ironing board. It's just over here. Okay. So there's the main part of the pumpkin. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew the stem together. So this is your 2 background pieces and your green stem. Your green stems can all be the same. You can pull little pieces of stash out. It's up to you. So we're going to do our stem next. If you've moved your needle, you can move it back if you want. You can leave it where it is. Your choice on how you sew your 1/4 inch seam. Like I said, there are no quilt police in my videos. There's no quilt police in my studio. In fact, my husband tries to stay out of my studio. I love him, but he knows not to mess with me while I'm working. Okay, so we're stitching this little stem down. While I'm stitching, I want to say thank you to all of my new subscribers. Thank you for joining us here at Pine Hollow Quilts. And I hope you're getting some knowledge out of what I can show you here. All right, and there's that. And we're going to do a quick press on that. This one I'm going to press towards the center, even though my background is a little darker, but that's just the way the fabric wants to go. So that's the way I'm going to let it go. Yeah, I know I didn't set these seams, but that's okay. There we go. So now we have the stem. And I'm going to take the stem. Remember, your 8.5 is this direction, your 7.5 is this direction, because when you go to put your stem on, if it doesn't fit, it's on the wrong side. If it's too big, turn your pumpkin around. See? Too big. Wrong side. If I get it lined up, it'll fit. And that's it. So that's where we're going to sew it. Use pins here if you wish. I don't like pins, I'm not a pinner. I avoid it at all costs. Unless, of course, I absolutely have to. Okay, last step. Make sure your beginning and your end is lined up with the edge of your pumpkin. A couple threads here. Press it open. Okay, no, I don't think I'm going to press this open. I think, let me see what it looks like. I'm going to press it towards the pumpkin. My little itty bitty iron. In here, and I'm going to give it a little bit better press in here. Alright, almost done. There we go. Guess what we have? We have a pumpkin. Super fast, super easy. And you can make as many as you want and do with them what you need to do. But now comes time for the bonus block. We're going to do the leaf. And the leaf is a little bit more time consuming because it has more pieces, but it's still not any harder. So let's get back over to the cutting mat and we'll cut pieces for the leaf. Okay, so here we are ready to make our leaf block. And this is the leaf block right here. And we're going to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to show you how to make these quarter square or these half square triangles 8 at a time. So you can essentially make 2 blocks at once. So the first step you need to do is, and I cut a strip off of my background fabric and I cut a strip off of my leaf fabric 5 3/4 inches. So I just cut a 5 3/4 inch strip from each one of them. I have them layered together right here, my leaf fabric and my background. And this is going to make your life so much easier when you're doing it this way. So now you're going to cut 5 3/4 inch squares. And you only need 1 set. I know how much I love this fabric. I bought it several years ago. It's a Stonehenge fabric. And I'm going to be making a bunch more of these leaves to do some other things with, or even to make a bigger quilt. But you just need 1 set. Okay, 1 set of squares. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to need 4 2.5 inch squares of your leaf fabric. So I'm just going to pull this off and use this because it's here, it's cut, and it's from the same color strip, so it'll all go together because these are actually ombres. So I'm going to do a 2.5 inch little strip here. And again, just like before, I will give you all of the cutting instructions. But these are 2.5 inch squares, and you need 4 of them. So I'll have to do this twice. There's 1 set. Alright. I'm going to stack these together for time. And I'm going to make 2 cuts. 2.5 and 2.5 is 5. cut off of the excess. All right, there are my 4 squares. Okay, so there's my 4 2.5-inch squares, and there is my set of 5 3/4 inch squares. Now what I need is background fabric, which is my brown. And I'm not going to cut this because I already have it over there with another one. But you need 1 2.5-inch square. You need 2 1/4-inch squares. And then you need some rectangles. You need 2 1.5 at 6.5 and 1.5 at 8.5. All right, and let me get the directions over here, and I'll bring the camera closer so you can see them. All right, here we are, cutting for 1 leaf block. So of the leaf fabric, you need the 4 2.5-inch squares, and you need the 1 5 3/4-inch square. Background fabric, you need 1 5 3/4-inch square, 1 2.5-inch square, 2 2 1/4 squares, 2 1.5 by 6.5 rectangles, and 2 1.5 by 8.5-inch rectangles. Feel free to pause this so you can write it down. Let's get over to the sewing machine and start putting this together. Okay, here we are with all of our pieces. We've got the 5 3/4-inch squares still together. We've got the 4 2.5-inch squares of our leaf fabric. We've got the 1 2.5-inch background fabric, 2 2 1/4-inch background fabric, 2 1.5 by 6.5 rectangles, and 2 1.5 by 8.5-inch rectangles. Okay, so let's start by just focusing on this square. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw diagonal lines, corner to corner. I have this handy dandy little add a quarter, no, it's not an add a quarter. It's a 1/2 inch wide ruler. And what you want to do is, if you're using this, put the yellow line corner to corner, and then you're going to draw on either side to give you your stitching lines. Okay, think of the ruler as being your cut mark, and what you're drawing is going to be your stitching lines. If you don't have one of these nifty little rulers, and trust me, I didn't, but I got the ones that come in 3 sizes, so I have 3 of them. And if it comes off of alignment just a little bit during this process, it's fine. Okay, so if you can't use one of those and you have to use a regular ruler, that's fine. Line up your 1/4 inch line, corner to corner, because there's no need to go out and buy new tools that you don't have, but if you have it, use it. So I lined up my 1/4 inch line on my points, and this is still going to give me the same 1/4 inch line that I need to draw. The only difference is this one I have to turn so that I can line up my 1/4 inch on the points and draw the other side. So it can be done either with a regular ruler, or if you have one of these handy dandy 1/2 inch rulers. This one is OmniGrid. These work too. So now what we have is we have this marked, okay, here and here, and then over here we've got it here and here. We are going to go ahead right now and stitch on these lines, all 4 of them. So let's get these stitched down. Now is the time to make sure your squares are lined up. Now it's going to be where it counts. All right. Again, we are stitching on these lines. I like to chain piece. Easy enough to do with these. Just pull it out a little bit extra, turn it, and it goes. Just saves me an extra step of cutting a thread when I don't have to. Okay, now we're going to do the other 2. Remember, we're stitching on the lines. Pull it out a little bit, turn it, put it right back under there. So now we have stitched exactly what we drew. We have these 2 lines stitched, and we have these 2 lines stitched. So the next step, we're going to cut these apart. Rotating mat's always a good thing. So on your square now, we sewed to the corners. We're going to cut on the straights. Okay, so line up your rulers right across the 2. You've got a diamond here in the center. You're going to go right across that stitching. And you're going to make sure that it is lined up square with the fabric and still staying in there. You have to do some eyeballing here. That looks pretty square to me. Cut. Do not move the fabric. Gently lift your ruler. Turn either your mat or your arm or however you have to do it, and do the exact same thing across the other 2 points of that little tiny diamond. Again, you're cutting on the straights. We sewed on the bias, we're cutting on the straight. Okay, so line up your centers, line up your, square up your block as much as possible, and then cut through that center. Okay, now we've done that. Now we come back and cut through our diagonals. Exactly where we measured, point to point, we cut through them. So you're making 4 cuts. 2 on the straight, 2 on the diagonal. I like to do the straight first, so if anything shifts, I can pull the diagonals out and cut them separately. All right, and here we go. One little thread, there we go. 8 half square triangles right there. Open them up, press them back. So let's do a little bit of pressing here so that we can get this leaf going. And from here on out, it's all right there. Just have to lay it out. So this is going to make 8 at a time. For 1 leaf block, you only need 4 of them. So guess what? You've just made enough for 2 leaves. cuts down your time a little bit. I am pressing to the dark, which is my background fabric. Yes, press to the dark side. Go to the dark. Star Wars fan. Okay, not as big as some people in my family, but yeah, still a Star Wars fan. Okay. So I'm only going to do 4 of these because we only need 4 to do 1 leaf block. But I love this fabric so much, I can't wait to make more leaf blocks. Okay, last one. And if I was doing this en masse, making a bunch of leaf blocks, I would be getting up and going to my ironing board. But this little one works fine for just now. Okay, and then I'm going to take this, snip off my little dog ears here. There's 2. 3, 4. Okay, so there's that. Now the next thing we have to do, and let's do it this way because you don't necessarily have to do this. We're going to lay out our leaf block. So I need my 2.5 inch square, and I have to do this facing me. I'm not good enough to do it facing you. And one of those, and one of those. So this is going to be the top edge of our leaf. And I've got to go with one I've already made. So let me find one I've already made. Okay. And then the next one is going to go like this, out here. And then this is where your solids are going to come in. One solid there. And one solid there. Like I said, I wish I could do this facing you, but I'm not that talented. And you're going to put your other one here. And then this last one. Okay, so this bottom square right here, so you only need 3 of these if you're going to do it this way. This bottom square, you can either put a stem on it, which we're going to make in a minute, or if you don't want to do a stem, you can just cut another 2.5 inch background square and leave it a background square. It's up to you. I like stems. So we're going to take that last 2.5 inch square, and we're going to take our 2.25 inch squares, and these 2.25 inch squares, we're going to draw lines again across one direction. So let's move these over here. Move that up here for a minute. We're going to go across one corner. And this is making our stem block. Like I said, you can or you can choose not to do the stem block. I like the stem. I've seen this done with different sizes of stems, and I'm going to show you how you can change the different size of your stem. In fact, I saw one recently that was a little fatter. I don't like fat stems. I like skinny stems. So what's going to happen is we're going to take one of our marked squares, and we're going to line up corner to corner with our leaf, right sides together, and I'm going to sew the line that I just drew. The line that I just drew. Okay, I'm going to sew on that line. If you want if you want your stem a little fatter, all you have to do is make this background square a little bigger. No, smaller. But let's sew this first, and I'll show you. Okay, so stitching on the line, corner to corner of the background square. Again, you can take these triangles over and cut them off and make them even. to reuse, or these ones I find a little small, so I'm not going to bother. Make sure when you're cutting the excess off that you're cutting away from the area that has the extra leaf fabric. You want to cut off the side that you lined up and trim threads. And here's why. Because you're going to open it up. Okay, you're going to open this up. I'm going to go press it real quick. I'm pressing towards the background. So let me get this pressed real quick, and then we're going to get the other one on there. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so here we are, pressed open. So now we're going to lay the other background square directly opposite of the background square you just sewed on, and line it up with your leaf square. And you'll have that little bit sticking out. That's exactly what you want. And then we're going to, again, sew on the diagonal line. Okay, there's my diagonal line. I'm going to trim towards the corner, 1/4 inch-ish. Okay, and when you open it up, there's your stem. Now, like I was saying just before I started sewing, if you want to make your stem a little bigger, all you have to do, instead of making these 2 1/4 inch background squares, make them 2-inch background squares, and that will give you a wider stem. I like skinny stems. Any tree I have ever looked at usually had skinny stems, but that's personal preference. Like I said, you can easily change the width of that stem, and it's not going to affect anything. As long as your base square that you're starting out with, your leaf square, is 2 1/2 inches. Okay, so here we'll bring our leaf block back in. Here we go. Leaf block all arranged. And there's your stem. Now we're just going to sew this together like a traditional 9-patch. Alright, and I like to chain piece everything, so let's see if I can keep it all straight. I hope after you watch the video once, you'll go out and cut your own fabric and make some with me. And we're going to get a bunch of fall leaves. Feel free to post either here in the comments section on YouTube, or post them to my Facebook page at Pine Hollow Quilts. And let me see what you're working on. Let me see your leaves and your pumpkins. Let me see how you've put them together. And if you give me maybe a week, I'll have one up there so I can show you how I've actually finished it off. All right. Scissors. All right. Almost. See, I like chain piecing because it keeps my thread tails and stuff that I have to trim down to a minimum. I can usually keep it lined up. Alright, this is the center. These two go together. I just love this fabric from Stonehenge. Stonehenge is one of my favorite fabric manufacturers. I'm gonna cut this last single one off. this is the stem block. Make sure that your stem is pointing up in towards the center of the leaf. Line up the corners. Like I said, there are no quilt police here, so fudge where you need to. And because most of these are on the diagonal, if you need to give it a little tug, just a little tiny tug, not a huge tug. A huge tug is going to throw it all wonky, and your quilter is going to be a little upset with you, and you're going to be a little upset with you when it comes time to quilt it. Okay, so here are the 3 sections. So as you can see, it's all placed the correct direction. Stem's heading in. All right. Now I'm not going to bother pressing these because I'm just going to use my machine to do it. Then I'll press it all at the end. I will start it, make sure my sewing edge is lined up, and then what I'm going to do is nest the seams. I'm going to have the back one going down, and I'm going to push the top one up, and the same thing down here. Back one going down, top one going up. That way I can make sure that my seams are going to be where they need to be, and everything is nice and centered and on point, and whatever other word you want to use for it, but my points are going to line up, because that's how I'm pushing them when I'm sewing them. All right, you got to come down there, and you need to go up there. I absolutely love to use my walking foot when I'm piecing, because I know where my 1/4 inch is, just because that's all I've ever used. So it makes it easier for me. Okay, there's those 2. Now we're going to put the 3rd one on, and then I'm going to check my seams to make sure they're all going the same direction. Okay, so the back one goes up this time, and the front one goes down, so that they will nest nice and snug. Okay, get it started. Line up those seams. Line up the next set of seams. Like I said, you're dealing with bias, so you will have a little bit of stretch in there. And here we are. Now I can turn it around because I can see. There is the leaf block. Let me take you over. Oh, no, we're not done. Okay, because we have to make this the same size as the pumpkin block. Forgot about that. Okay, so this is where your strips come in. And you're going to sew them on opposite sides of your block. And I think you can sew strip blocks on, so I'm not going to worry about this. Yeah, it's a little off, but that's okay. That was part of the whole stretching. I'll make it 6.5 and 6.5, and then I put them on the wrong side. Because remember, the 8.5 has to go this way. So for this block, it's not going to matter, but to line up, it's going to matter. So your 6.5 and 6.5 have to go on the top and bottom. Right? No, why isn't this lining up? Okay. No, they have to go on the sides. Okay, bear with me here, folks. I don't think I cut my strips right. Oh, my seam allowances are in there. That's why. Okay, so your 6.5 and 6.5 go on the sides, because I have to think of where my pumpkins are. The 8.5 and the 8.5 will go on the top and the bottom. Okay, 8.5, 8.5, top and bottom, 6.5 on the sides. Okay, so your sides on first. Let's just go ahead and do that. We'll just sew these on real quick. And you can tell this is live and I'm not doing a recut on this one. Yep, this is the daily problems of doing everything live and on camera and not having a way to fix it. But that's okay. All right, there's one side on. Second side going on. So remember, 6.5 inch go on the sides because we need to make them square. But I guess if they're going to be square, you can put them on the top too. I think what I was not counting on was my seam allowances. Which is why it looked off to me. So if you put them on the top and bottom and then on the sides, you're going to end up with an 8.5 inch square. Yep, these go on the other two sides. That's exactly what it was. I wasn't accounting for my seam allowances. Silly me. Okay. Yes, I know I didn't press them. It's okay. My clothes end up wrinkled too, so I'm good with that. I mean, who wants to use an iron to iron clothes? They invented irons to iron fabric for quilts, right? I know you can all relate with me on that one. Okay, last side going on. Once these are sewn on, give everything a really good press with your hot iron. Steam or not, your choice. Okay, now we're done. Now we have an 8.5 inch square block. All right, let me take you over to the design wall and show you what I have so far. Okay, so here we are with a kind of layout. I've got a bunch of pumpkins up there. Here's the one we just made. This is the leaf that we just made. Here's another one that I just threw in there. So there are all kinds of different ways to lay it out. You can put your leaf blocks in here and make a table runner, or not a table runner, just a small wall hanging. Or you can make more of each, make a bigger wall hanging. Take some of these out. You could do a vertical wall hanging with just pumpkins, or you can do a small one, or you could do placemats. Side by side, and then put a border around them, make a nice placemat. These are the little pinwheels that I told you about. Oops. It's just the half square triangles that I saved from cutting my pumpkins, because this pumpkin is right here, and I stitched them together. So I have pinwheels. So you can put these along, stitch them together for the border, or if you're going to do like a wall hanging, do pumpkins somewhere else, or do leaves. You could even put these in and do like a little sashing in between them. How you want to handle your pinwheels, if you make them, is up to you, but that's another way that you can go ahead and use the fabric that you have, the little pieces, it's there, you're cutting it, and when you get them cut off, just run them straight back through and they'll be good. Just make sure you use a ruler when you're trimming the corners of your pumpkin blocks so you can get a nice straight edge, not hand cutting them. This is all I have for today. These are the pumpkin and leaf blocks. Go ahead and show me what you've made. I'm going to get one of these put together, making a whole lot more of the leaf blocks because I really love this fabric. Feel free to post your pictures. Again, subscribe down below here on YouTube, and we'll be back in October with something new. Thank you.